France and Germany demand workers' access to UK in return for migrant deal. Published by The Telegraph. Any deal for Paris and Berlin to help stop the boats will come attached with calls over youth mobility. France and Germany have demanded improved post-Brexit rules for EU workers and students in Britain in return for a new migration deal to drive down channel crossings. The two countries asked the European Commission to negotiate concessions alongside a deal on asylum with the United Kingdom in a letter seen by The Telegraph. The call on Brussels is an early result for Sir Keir Starmer's efforts to reset relations with the EU and his intense diplomatic outreach to Emmanuel Macron, the French president, and Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor. But any deal to return channel migrants will be difficult and come attached with demands over youth mobility and calls on Britain to resettle genuine refugees in Europe to the UK. Brussels must rapidly present a draft negotiating mandate with a view to reaching an agreement with the United Kingdom on asylum and immigration issues, Paris and Berlin wrote to the Commission. We believe that Brexit has had very detrimental consequences for the coherence of our migration policies, said the joint letter. The absence of provisions governing the flow of people between the UK and the Schengen area is clearly contributing to the dynamics of irregular flows, and to the danger posed to people using this route in the Channel and the North Sea. The new government is conducive to progress on the issue. The joint letter was sent by Nancy Faeser, the German Interior Minister, and Gérald Darmanin, her outgoing French counterpart, on Friday. Mr. Darmanin has now left his post, as France ushered in a new right-wing government that promises to be even tougher on illegal immigration at the weekend. As many as 41,078 migrants tried to reach the UK from the EU's Schengen zone in the first 8 months of this year, according to Frontex, the bloc's border agency. The ministers said the lack of a deal regulating the movement of persons between the UK and the Schengen zone is obviously contributing to the momentum of irregular migration flows. They added, the arrival in office of a new British government, demonstrating its intention to cooperate constructively with the EU, seems to us to be conducive to concrete progress on this issue. Labour hopes to make the fight against illegal migration part of a new security and defence pact with the EU. The bloc sees the negotiations as a way to impose pressure on the government to agree to increase legal youth mobility for EU citizens into Britain. Labour has already rejected a call from Brussels to negotiate such a deal, or rejoin the Erasmus student exchange scheme. Diplomatic sources have previously said that any EU migrant return deal would require Britain to take in a share of migrants from under-pressure countries in the bloc, as member states do. We are relying heavily on the Commission to simultaneously address the issues of legal mobility, in particular family and professional mobility, the fight against illegal immigration and the right of asylum with our British partner, the letter reads. Government insists its red lines have not changed. During the Brexit negotiations, the European Commission rejected UK calls for an EU-wide migration deal to replace the Dublin regulation, which means migrants must stay in the first safe country they land. Any EU-UK deal would require the unanimous support of the EU's 27 member states, which is unlikely given that migration is a hugely divisive issue in the bloc. Countries such as Italy and Greece, which have borne the brunt of migrant arrivals into Europe, will likely resist moves to return people to the EU, as will the fiercely anti-migrant Hungary. The overture from Paris and Berlin comes after Sir Keir told gathered leaders at the European Political Community Summit earlier this year that the UK would never leave the European Convention of Human Rights after ditching the Rwanda plan. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, will meet Ms. Faeser, Bruno Retailleau, the new French Interior Minister, and Italy's Matteo Piantedosi, her Italian counterpart, at a G7 ministerial meeting next week. The government insists its red lines have not changed and that there will be no return to freedom of movement or any involvement in an EU quota scheme for migrants. Starmer would do anything to get closer to the EU, James Cleverly, the shadow Home Secretary and Tory leadership candidate, told The Times. This is a man who campaigned for a second referendum and said all immigration laws were racist. The EU cannot wait to play Labour like a fiddle.